We're very happy that every video, every uploaded content of this YouTube channel is patronized well by you. You watched it, you share it, you put good comments in it. And we're very inspired. And our only purpose is to actually make you aware of all that are necessary so that you don't only pass the board, but you become better professional teachers that you want to be. We talked about the Philippine Professional Standards for teachers. I talked with little depth of the 7 domains, but I promise that I will give you every specific domain and, get deeper into the strands of each of these domains. In the earlier episode, we talked about the content knowledge and pedagogy. We talked about it. And for this episode, we will talk about learning environment. Even if you have something here, and even if you know how to teach, if you wouldn't know how to manage that learning environment, which major element is you will not make it well in the board exam and in that classroom. And mind you, when you speak of the learning environment now, you're not only talking about the physical classroom, because now we're talking about the virtual space. Now let's get down to business. Let's talk about learning environment. The second domain is the learning environment. And remember this, everyone and everything in that classroom is part of the learning environment. But there's a new catch with that learning environment. If you think that the learning environment only refers to the physical environment, you're wrong, because the virtual space is now part of that learning environment. Let's talk about the second domain of the PPST. As I said earlier, you are not only talking about the physical environment or the physical classroom, you also talk about the virtual space. Okay, remember the physical environment is what is referred to in behaviorism. Specifically and particularly that of Pavlov, who theorized about the role of the physical environment in the behavior of the child. And when you speak of the virtual space, it's not only online. Okay, online is good, but always remember that the virtual space needs to be interactive. Okay, now, how do you then characterize this environment, the physical and the virtual space? You characterize it to be safe and secure, and also remember that it should be supportive. But aside from being safe and secured and being supportive, it has to be fair. And these are the characteristics of the physical environment that you have to build for the child. Now, of course, the purpose of the child to be there, your outcome for that child to be in that learning environment is for learning. And therefore, it has to be learning focused. That's one important element of that learning environment. It should be learning focused. In fact, the learning focused environment should be purposive. And that's the magic word. There has to be purposive learning, which it should be learning focused. Okay, now, because it's purposive, therefore, it has to be structured. There has to be structured activities. And therefore, it's not just a random kind of activities, but these are structured activities because you want purposive learning. And by structured activities, that means you are using a wide range of resources. Okay, you will use a wide range of resources that are, number one, it has to be intellectually challenging. Okay, and aside from that, it has to be stimulating. All right, think about it. Let me put it in this context. The learning environment should be learning focused, which is why it has to be very purposive, and that is demonstrated by the structured activities that will use a range of resources that should be intellectually challenging and should be stimulating. And the challenge of this learning environment is actually it will encourage. Okay, it should encourage constructive experience. Remember that what we want children to be able to do through education is actually the ability to create. They should be able to create. And related to this, very much related to this, will be, and one of the most important part of this physical environment, either in the virtual space, is what you call classroom management. Okay, which is what every child should be able to experience, and every teacher should be able to actually master. And for you to understand classroom management, remember the 3 C's. The first C is content. You manage the content. You also manage the context. But you have to manage as well the conduct. Okay, a classroom where classroom management is well established is a classroom that has good content, and this is coming from the lessons. Context, this is coming from application. Okay, and the conduct coming from discipline. Now, how ready are you to be a teacher who understands the learning environment? And let's recap. By learning environment, we mean that you create the physical environment, which is explained so well by behaviorism, specifically Pavlov, and that virtual space, which is not only online, but has to be interactive. And that environment, that learning environment has to be safe, it has to be secured, it has to be supportive of the child, and of course, it has to be fair. The reason why a learning environment is established is for learning. Therefore, it should be learning focused. And because you want it learning focused, it has to be purposive. And by purposive, this is where the elements of goal and outcome will come in. A teacher will enter a classroom with an end in mind. From the big goal in the curriculum, the teacher breaks it down to a lesson's outcome, and that outcome is the change that you hope you are able to achieve because of that learning experience with you in that learning environment. And purposive, you want it purposive and you want it learning focused, then you have to structure activities. And by these structured activities, these are carefully crafted activities which will capitalize on classroom management so that you're able to use range of resources. Okay, and by range of resources, you're talking about the classmate. You're talking about some methods, some procedures. You talk about some material, some technology, some time, and all of these materials you use. And this range of resources should be intellectually challenging, and it should be stimulating because you want to actually construct. You want to be able to engage the learner to a constructive experience. And finally, as a teacher, you should engage in classroom management where the content is derived from the lesson, the context is derived from the application, and the conduct is derived from the discipline. Challenging indeed. But the classroom is the teacher's kingdom. Not to rule, but a kingdom to build so that these learners will transform to become the best persons they can be. And that can only be achieved if the teacher is not only capable of content, knowledge, and pedagogy, which we discussed in the first episode. The teacher should also be able to set up a learning environment. And this is the second domain. in the third part of this PPST series, we'll talk about the learner, the diverse learner. And that's why if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, you better subscribe. And if you have not liked this episode yet, please share it in your Facebook, share it to your friends so that a lot will be great teachers they can be. See you again in the future, and I hope you're safe. God bless us all.